discrimination is not just a matter of, oh, I feel this person incapable of. It's when there is so much of that idea that you have social, systemic, institutional forces that prohibit people from being that thing.
So I think that there's the kind of danger of the traditional gendered dynamic of men talking more than women or talking over women. I think sometimes it's actually easier to get the male students to not talk over people than the female students. Perhaps it's partly because with male students I can bring up that gender dynamic, and male students generally don't want to feel like they're being kind of male chauvinists and talking over women. So it seems like they sometimes maybe actually listen more to that concern.
Okay, so people who come from particularly strong experiences with patriarchal homes and patriarchal environments, female students who come from those sort of experiences tend to be very quiet, incredibly deferential towards male students in the classroom, to the point of not speaking at all. You can actually see sort of like a physical caving inward, almost as if the thought of speaking out in a public place is something they can't even remotely begin to identify for themselves. And by the same token, I think male students who've come from strong patriarchal environments tend to feel very entitled to speak in really problematic ways. And so, of course, they should speak more. I see a lot of that. And so where you see those sort of intersections of gender power, classroom interactions become complicated.
Yeah. In general, and they've done tons of studies on this, male students talk more in class. They get more attention. They get called on more. They generally monopolize the conversation more. And you really have to be conscious of that in order to not let it happen. And this is not every male student, and it's certainly not every female student. I see in group work, women are much more likely to be the ones writing everything down, and then men are more likely to present it.
I can swear in the classroom. I can be casual, I can be flippant, I can be foul-mouthed, if I choose. None of which actually has all that much of a negative impact on how my students perceive me as a teacher in the classroom. They see that as just, well, that's just natural, it just makes sense, he's still the teacher. But notice that's qualified with a gender.
Teach with Kevin Gannon, and he was always Dr. Gannon, and I was always Mrs. Getty. And at the time when I was first here teaching in that program, there were some older male professors who taught in the program as well, and they just would not listen to any ideas that I came up with, they told me that there were no female philosophers, and that's why we didn't read any female philosophers, that there were no female scientists, and that's why we didn't read any female scientists, that there were no female books written of significance, and that's why we didn't read those. And I was told that repeatedly every time I tried to add more women to the curriculums.
When students don't do the work, I'm pretty blunt about it. And I have been told on student evaluations that I'm a bitch. Perhaps they would use a different term, but I think it's more likely that they would see it as them kind of being kept on task in a good way. Male professors can kind of get away with more a lot of times in terms of kind of both establishing and kind of maintaining authority while at the same time being seen as nice, I guess. Kind of fun.
The only possible distinction of difference that would allow students to see us as separate in that regard and act accordingly is rooted in gender.
That I am kind of non-judgmental, though I know sometimes my facial expressions seem judgmental, apparently.
I've been asked before in classes, well, as a woman, what do you think of this? And, it's well, I can't speak for my entire gender. Usually when people start with well, I'm not a sexist but statement, or I'm not a racist but, I usually try to stop them before they say after the but. Wait a minute, that usually doesn't end well.
Make your language reflect the diversity of the classroom, and people will actually start to reflect that diversity in how they think and speak. I try to speak in gender neutral ways, and I try to avoid the default to male pronouns. When my students speak, I try to make sure I shut up, and I don't automatically assume that when I speak they should shut up. So sometimes, you get a really good conversation, people are talking, the teacher jumps in, everybody gets quiet. The second I do that and realize I've done that, I try and just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted. Y'all finish." Let them talk more than you.
Like, I certainly kind of try to get everyone speaking and give kind of different opportunities in terms of small group work and full class, and kind of sometimes calling on people of getting kind of everyone's voices heard.
Part of my role as a teacher is basically trying to give up enough power so that people feel comfortable doing what they need to do in terms of the intellectual, affective, and cognitive work of the class, while at the same time maintaining enough power so that I can make sure to steer conversations where they need to so people don't feel abused or trampled on or, frankly, in some cases, challenged, provoked in problematic ways, while also making sure that they are challenged and provoked in the ways that we want.
I see a lack of female professionals helping young women and mentoring young women. I want to see more females helping other females move along in their profession. It's when women help other women or minorities help other minorities.